about evaluation frameworks. Hello. These are basically techniques that have been developed over the course of the years, basically to track user experience at a large scale. And these are typically things that you do after your product has been launched. So similarly to what we have seen before for log analysis, this is something that you might want to do when your product is already out there, okay? And that's why in the UCD timeline, we usually place this at the very end, because obviously your product should be already in the hands of users, okay? One of the evaluation framework that I'm going to describe today is called Google Heart Framework. And you can actually find like a paper, a white paper that was published on googleventure.com that actually describes this in details. So if you want to learn more about this methodology, feel free to read that. But essentially, it's a method to basically collect quantitative data for products that are already in production, okay? So there is obviously a combination of logs that you need to have also instrumented your app with, but also surveys. And we are going to see how these two things can be combined together in a very powerful manner. So when we actually do these evaluation frameworks, we look for signals. Signals in this definition are a number of dimensions that are very meaningful for the user experience, and these are measurable in a sense because we can instrument basically our product in a way that we can capture whether people actually are responding to those signals. For instance, just a few examples here, counting the number of times that people log on the website could be like a signal that we might want to track, whether these are returning customers or new customers, how much time they spend, or whether they perform multiple times a certain action on the website. So maybe you guys have seen this already, but you didn't realize you were actually experiencing an evaluation framework or the heart framework. These are like two small animations that show you how the art framework is actually implemented in many Google products. So maybe you noticed sometimes when you are in Google Maps or in pictures, you have like these little questionnaires that pop up on the bottom right corner of the product. If you decide to take the questionnaire and you push on the tick survey, then you have like typically a very short questions. It's a Likert scale that says, okay, how much you are satisfied with this on a scale from 1 to 5, and then you provide the answer, and then it disappears, okay? And the same thing, actually, you can see on the mobile version of the same apps. Well, this questionnaire is the component that is user-facing. So it's the part that actually is visible to the user on a Google product. But there are like other components of this system that are hidden in the background. So HEART stands for happiness, engagement, adoption, retention, and task success. These are like 5 user experience dimensions of this framework. And then let's go through them one by one. Happiness is basically how much people are satisfied typically with a product. And typically this is captured through one of these short questionnaires that we have seen previously. So here I'm showing you like one of the metrics that is typically used for happiness, because it says, you know, how are you satisfied with Google Drive? And then it goes from very satisfied to very unsatisfied, okay? And then when you get this metric, you basically have like the level of satisfaction or happiness that they have with the product. Then there is engagement. Engagement is something that actually is logged. How much time they typically spend interacting with a given service. It can be in terms of number of seconds, or it can be in terms of frequency, how many times they actually open the app in the week. Okay. Adoption is typically a metric that refers to how many new customers your product is able to capture every week, on a week by week basis, week on week, or month on month basis. How many new customers is your product basically able to capture? And retention of those that actually you did already capture. How many of them actually are returning customers? How many times you manage to get them back to your product? And task success is actually a much more fine-grained metric, that user dimension, because it actually speaks about like whether users in your product are able to successfully complete one specific use case or one specific flow that was intentionally designed for them. So, for instance, if they have to use your product to prepare basically an invoice, are they able to complete the invoice and send it to the customers? This could be like a task that you want to measure through the HEART framework. Then there are like three levels in which you monitor those 5 dimensions, this user-centric dimensions of the HEART framework. At the first level is the goals. So what are the goals that you have for your product? So in a sense, do you want the product to grow the user base, or do you want the product to increase in the user satisfaction on how pleased are your customers by using the product? Or do you have a different goal? For instance, you might want for your customers basically to generate more user-centric, user-generated content. For instance, in terms of the pieces of data that gets uploaded, or for instance, number of news content that gets generated in case of Facebook, or stuff like that. Signals are basically how you are going to say whether your customers are actually able to achieve that goal, or your product is going to achieve that goal or not. Okay, whether what kind of goals, what kind of measurements you can say in order to say whether you have achieved that goal or not. And metrics is basically more specifically the observable behavior that you're going to study in order to understand whether the goals are met. And I'm going to provide examples for each of these. So essentially, if you put like the 5 user dimensions on the rows of this matrix and the 3 levels that we described on the columns, and then you obtain this matrix here that is the core of the evaluation framework that I'm describing. Okay. So for goals, at the level of engagement, you might have like a goal that says, I want users to keep discovering new content. So this is typically like something that YouTube might want to write out for this particular cell of the framework. Okay. In terms of signals, given that you want people to keep discovering more content, probably you want to look at the time that people spend engaging with your product, because the more time they spend, probably the more new content they will discover. Okay? But in terms of metrics, the difference between signals and metrics, and here it gets very specific on what you consider basically like an increase or a positive signal. So here, for instance, you might want to consider like the time in absolute terms and say, okay, from every week, basically, I'm going to sum up all the seconds that users are going to spend in my product, or I'm going to consider the average of each session, and then have like an average across the week. Or, for instance, I'm going to look at the mode or the median of my distribution. And depending on how you set the specific metric, then you might have like different outcomes. Okay. All right. So that's pretty much it. Do you guys have questions? Yes.
So you say that it's on a product that is already in production. So
yeah.
So really in production and not in project or to.
No, because typically this is something that you need to do through a combination of logs. So something that you collect on the actual user base that interacts with your product, and surveys that you display on the product. Okay.
It means to improve our.
Yeah.
So the main goal of this evaluation framework is to improve our
your product. Because the thing is that your role as interaction designers doesn't finish when the product is out there. It's not that, okay, I released my product, I'm done, I can look at something else. No, actually, as a matter of fact, these kind of products are always in a kind of development mode. I mean, you keep improving on the interface, you keep changing stuff, you try to add new functionality, new feature, you want to satisfy your customers even more, right? And so there is always like stuff that changes on these products. They never stay stable.
So it's a step to.
Yeah, say for instance, the way we were using this when I was at Google, we were testing like the satisfaction with new functionalities, right? So we had like these metrics and we were monitoring them constantly, right? On a number of different products. And then you, for instance, in Gmail, we were like releasing like a new feature in Gmail. And then typically what happens in this is that you get these graphs that show you basically the level of satisfaction, and it's pretty stable after a while. And then as soon as you basically you release a new feature, you always have like a drop in satisfaction. Okay? And the drop is because there's this novelty effect, and people are reluctant to the need of readapting to the changes in the UI. So you have like a drop, but then after a couple of days, basically the satisfaction level goes back up. Okay, and then the goal is to say, is it going to back to the same level as before, or is it going to be a little bit higher than what we were before, right? And that's the kind of reasoning that you do with this kind of frameworks.
Is it used outside of Google?
Sorry?
Is it used outside of Google?
Yeah, I mean, if not the hard one, they typically have like an evaluation framework. Every big company has one.
And they all quite the same? Or?
They're pretty much the same, yes. I mean, you have like these kind of questionnaires that typically pop up to a representative sample of users. They collect data in the background, even if you don't notice, but they do. I mean, they always have like this kind of log analysis running in the background. Every big company has one. So yes, if not specifically this one actually has the advantage that it's public. So Google Venture is a venture capital owned by Google, and they finance like startups. So this is like the stuff that they give them to the new startups in order to set up their own business when they start kicking out their product in the market. So this is part of the training that they deliver to the startuppers. Questions? All right, so I think we are done for this part. I'm going to skip this. So let's talk about like what's going to happen in the next for the next class. So this week, I assume you guys will be conducting tests of your design, and after you will be done with the tests, you will start writing your design recommendations. Okay. So let's look more in details about what this should look like. Essentially, if you haven't done this already, I mean, you should finalize your test protocol with the specific tasks that you want to test in your test sessions with your prototypes. You should discuss the testing strategy that you want to use, essentially with the module that I presented previously, whether you want to compare with an existing product, whether you want to compare to distinct version of the same tool, whether you want to compare with something that is completely offline, and so forth, right? Then you conduct your tests with end users. Obviously, you recruit them using the same strategies we have already seen. And then you debrief and outline the design recommendations. So essentially, what are these design recommendations? Is when you say, okay, we have done the tests, and these are like our findings, okay? It could be, for instance, that you learned that you need to completely change a couple of features, or that you are pretty much on the right track, and you just need to adapt and adjust like a few details. Or it might even be that by doing the tests, you realize that you are not at all on the right track. You need to either pilot your project or kill the project in the cradle. Okay, and all of these are, totally okay conclusions to reach. Again, you don't need to come here to the final presentation and say, we have found like the ultimate weapon. You can also say, we did this and we learned that it's not the right project, or we should not invest more, and that's fine. Again, the point of this class is to learn the right work methodology. I don't expect you to come up with a killing idea that you're going to sell. Yes.
So the recommendation can be about the design itself and the functionality we offer.
Yeah, I mean, what I am expecting is that you're going to talk in details about like the functionalities, whether the functionality that your project actually is trying to provide to the users are the right set of functionalities, whether you felt like that you are addressing a real need and you're doing this in the right way. This kind of comparisons that I'm talking about is whether you have like the feeling that there's really this additional value in your project that you really they came out of the experiments that you conducted. Okay. So yes, I mean there should be like it should be focused mostly on the design. This discussion. Okay.
So
yeah.
In a sense, it's trying to prove if our research finding were right or wrong.
Yeah, in a sense, is to say, okay, we have done this formative research and we come up with this initial idea. It may be that there are like a couple of scenarios. Either basically the way we translated our initial findings into design was correct or incorrect, or it may be even that you start questioning the formative research that you have conducted and say, maybe we haven't done the research entirely, or we should actually restart from scratch and do the formative research. So there are several ways in which you can go about it, right? Or you can say, we think we are on the right track, we got positive feedback from the customers, even the metrics actually are positive because it seems that when they use this, they save time, they are more satisfied, and you have these kind of comparisons which are encouraging. And then if you were in a real startup, you might consider this as a positive sign that will tell you that you should continue investing on the design, right? Questions? Okay. Okay, so this is for the presentation, obviously, 5 minutes. So this is a very important point. So next week is going to be the last presentation that we have before the final presentation, okay? And we are going to have 4 different groups that present. And today, for instance, I didn't enforce really the time because we had only one group presenting. But given that we are approaching the final presentation, next week I will be more strict with time. So try to respect this 5 minutes, because the day of the final presentation is going to be really enforced. Okay, so you cannot go over time. Okay. Questions? No? Okay, so we are done for today. I wish you a great week. If you have questions, we are going to stick around for a few minutes, a few more minutes, so you can ask us. Thank you.